think it's time. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Cammie. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And Bill, tell us where you're at right now.
So I'm in my office downtown Grand Rapids. I have an office at home. This is one of those big buildings. I look out to the river and the city, and it's actually very pretty, although I don't use this office a ton. You can see my motorcycle pictures and my stock market chart. Where would I be without those?
I love it. Listen, as we were getting started this morning, friends, family, I said to Bill, this is actually going to be one of my most favorite podcasts. And the reason being is because of the topic that we get to talk about today. And actually, Bill and I are going to do a series of podcasts, and we're actually going to listen to you guys about what you want to know more about. And we've already done some of the surveying and we've gotten a little bit of that. And so we will be doing a part 2 already, but a part 3, part 4, part 5 is all going to be contingent on our audience. And so today, you guys, we're going to start by just talking about money and generosity and how to manage your money. And many of you may or may not know, for many of you, you may or may not know this. I know, I'm like crazy about my kids. I know you see me doing business on a regular basis, and I'm super passionate about coaching and teaching, but most people don't know how passionate I am about money. And it's not necessarily making money. It's about keeping, stewarding, just generosity. And it's been something I've been passionate about from a very young age, Bill. And so I really just want to share lessons I've learned. I want to hear from you, an expert. I'm just somebody who's has experience, not necessarily an expert.
No, this is a topic you and I have had such great conversations about. And our stories are a little bit similar. Both of us come from, maybe some might call it more humble means, where I remember growing up that we didn't have always anything to give away. Just taking care of ourselves was kind of a full-time deal. And then when I started doing this, you don't make a lot of money when you start a business, right? You just put in tons and tons and tons of work and values and effort, and you hope someday it's going to come to something. And now it has. And so like you, we've had this journey of growing into seasons of not having as much, having a little more, and then having significant to give away and do things. And it's as much about what happens outside of us as what happens inside of us.
Totally. And so, before we jump into this, and you guys, I am going to give Bill a formal introduction here. He is a very dear friend of mine. And I would even call him a lifelong friend now, not just a seasonal friend, but I would call him a lifelong friend. And I really believe it was a God thing that I was introduced to Bill, and I have the luxury of having Bill in my life, because Bill, you don't traditionally just work. I mean, you kind of work with much bigger platforms, right?
That's been the interesting part of what I do. Before, it used to be to kind of do what I do and do it at the level where I tend to keep a smaller base with deeper relationships. But I have found now that with technology, we're able to help people that maybe couldn't meet some of those levels before, because the technology just makes it work so well. And so I'm finding that more recently, I've been able to help people, I guess you'd call it maybe not as big as everybody thinks you need to be, because the technology helps me, and I've streamlined. And as you know, if you have a great assistant and a great team, you can do those things you really, really love to do. So you and I are on the same boat there.
Well, and I know you've worked with churches in a big way. I'll let you talk about that here in a minute. But before we bring Bill in, let me just share a few stories with you guys so you know where my heart is at and why we're doing this episode. Like I said, money has been a big part of my whole life, actually. As a young child, my mom and dad really started instilling the importance of tithing at a very young age. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with the word tithing, it's something we talk about in the church, where you give the first 10% of income that comes into the household to the church. And, so just from a very young age, if I made $1 a week for an allowance, my parents would say, okay, let's grab 10% of that and let's put it in your bank account, and 10% of that and give it to the church. We talk about savings, and in order to incentivize me to save, they would tell me they would double anything I'd put in. I think it wasn't until I was older, when I actually had money to put in, that they stopped doubling, because 10 cents and doubling that was a lot easier than several hundreds of thousands of dollars. So So just from a very young age, also at that time we had checkbooks. So I'll never forget when I got my first bank account and a checkbook. I mean, you guys, literally until I was in college, my dad would still make me show him a balanced ledger to the penny, not a penny off, in my checkbook. And so that was something that I grew up really being very perfect in, I guess you could say. And then at a young age, I heard a sermon that really transformed everything for me. And this was pre me learning anything Dave Ramsey. This was pre being introduced to Robert Morris, which if you're listening right now, write those names down. You're definitely going to want to get books and follow these gentlemen in regards to money matters. And I'll give you some more information on that later. But I heard a sermon at a church we both attended, Bill. And I remember when I asked you to do this with me, I told you that the foundation was really off that sermon. Yeah. And so you guys, I will tell you, Bill's expertise is in tax planning, estate planning, retirement planning, investments, how to just manage your finances. Bill is your guy for all those things and more. He's just a wealth of knowledge on all things money matters, saving money, taxes, and how that's going to impact your income and what's the best way to leverage. And so I asked him to join me today for two reasons. Number one, because he has been my financial planner for a while now. And we did go to the same church where this lesson was taught. And I, I've learned a lot from Bill, and he's somebody I can ask a lot of questions to. And Bill, I work with a lot of people who are making more money than they've ever made in their whole life. And even for many of them than anybody that has ever gone before them has ever made. And at a young age, at such a young age. And I can't tell you the number of times I've heard people say, if I just would have known, if somebody would have just taught me, where did you learn these things? How can I get better with money management? Because often we can make a lot of money, but if we don't know how to keep it or steward it well, we'll probably spend it as fast as it comes in, right? So let me just break down the summary of what this sermon was for you guys. This will be the foundation of us and what we're sharing today. It's called the 10-10-80 plan. And for those of you that have never had any teaching in money matters, I would like to introduce you to the 10-10-80 plan because it was transformative for me. And then as I started learning these other things, everything just molded together real well. So what is the 10-10-80 plan? Well, the 10-10-80 plan is of 100% of the money that you make, that you earn income, 10% of it right away goes to the Lord. We'll get into a little bit of tithing and our philosophy behind that. I'll tell you guys a few stories that I have, but 10% goes right to the Lord. I truly believe that everything I've been given, even when I make, I believe it is God's. And so I'm just giving back part of what is already his. And that's all he asks of the money that I make. And so 10% goes to the Lord, 10% goes to savings. So I'm going to commit to every bit of money I bring into my home, 10% of it going into savings, and then spend 80, live on 80, create a budget, bills, live on 80. Now I may challenge you to say 10-20-70. I may challenge you to say 10-30-60 for other things you need to do, like paying off debt. But that's what that 80 is for. It's not just spending on new, it's paying off debt, it's credit cards, bills, all the things that we do to live every day. But I, from that moment on, adopted a plan called the 10-10-80 plan in my life. And you guys, I was in college at this time. And I might have made waitress money, right? I might have made no money. But just from a very young age, immediately, I already believed and had adopted a philosophy and a spiritual discipline of tithing. And then I started saving. And then I knew I had this 80% to live on. And so, Bill, that was really the foundation of my knowledge of stewarding money early on. And then obviously, like you said, life continues to move and we don't know what's going to happen. I came from very humble beginnings. And so some of you might say, easy to say, Cammie, you make a lot of money. Guess what, guys? I've been doing this since there was any money.
That's right.
Well before there was money, even when we were robbing Peter to pay Paul to get our bills paid every month, And so, Bill, talk to me a little bit about this philosophy of 10-10-80 or anything about tithe that you want to share.
No, I think it's a fantastic. I was there that when that sermon was preached. You probably even remember those, that there were these blocks that they brought out, these green blocks and the red blocks. It had typical of that wonderful pastor. The illustration was his thing, and my family, we took that too. And I'm going to laugh, Cami. I'm almost afraid if my children see this, they're going to be upset with me, because in my house, we've actually been teaching them a little bit different. We're saying 10% tithe, 40% you save, and 50 you get to spend. So they're going to think if they hear 10, because we try to tell them that the 10% is a great savings place, but we feel like God has entrusted us to do more, especially as incomes go up. So let's try to be more generous and have resources to do that. So 10-10-80 is a fantastic place to start. And I love that concept. So basically kind of 10% to, as you said, kind of the church and the tithe. And the word you used that was so important is this idea of first fruits. And anybody, and I know your folks will know this, that lives in a world where your pay is not a consistent, like guaranteed salary. We are much more like farmers, where we have to pay for a lot of things before we even get paid. And so the first fruits idea is a very difficult one for people that do what we do, because there's our pay can go up and down. And so there's this desire with that to kind of say, oh, I'm going to keep this in case I have a down month. And the idea of paying it out of the first is a very challenging, I do believe that's a biblical idea. And it just causes us to be in a deep and meaningful dependency upon God, to know his goodness and faithfulness is going to bring the other 90% our way when we give him the 10 first. And then to have the 10% for savings is a fantastic way to begin thinking about, how do I make real investments, and investments that grow and can expand the kingdom of God. So you and I were there for that. It was transformational for both of us. We both continue to live in it. And I would be happy probably having this conversation 1,000 times, because like you said, no one taught it to us, and now we get to teach it to others.
Yeah. And you guys, okay, it's just a foundation. It's just a foundation of how do I adult for real?
Yeah.
Like, how do I adult living right now and looking to the future? And whether you're making ideal money, less than ideal, or surpassing your dream ideal money. But it's just a great strategy. Now, before we move on to talk a little bit more in depth in this, can I talk to you for a minute about tithing, you guys? I just want to share my heart. And since this is my podcast, I get to do that. And if I get to share any success strategies that have absolutely, what I believe, set me up to be where I'm at today, I think this is one of those. I have a story I'd like to tell you, but let me read a piece of scripture from Malachi to you. In Malachi 3:10, and you can read it in a ton of translations and it reads a little different, but it says, bring the whole tithe. And the word tithe means 10% into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Talking about the church is really what I believe. Talking about, and we could get into arguments of, does it have to go to the church? Does it go to nonprofits? Like, I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to call it generosity and giving it back to God, right? So bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. This is the only time in the Bible where it says, my friends, test me in this, says the Lord Almighty. Who said it? The Lord said it. And see if I will not open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not even be room to store it. I need to read that again. I don't know if you guys heard me say that. The Lord said, test me in this. What is this? It's tithing. It's taking, if you bring in $100 into the home, giving 10 of it back to God, $10 of it. Then decide how much you're going to save, how much you're going to spend, etc. But when you test me in this, see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it. How many of you would like to have so much blessing, there's not even room enough to store it? And I think theologically, we could talk about, what is that blessing? Is it financial? Is it abundance? Is it favor? I think it could be all of it. And I think it's not limited to anything, but I believe it's a challenge of God saying to you, like, you can trust me. you can trust me with that 10%, which I just will say, you guys, I believe that every fiber of my being, it's not even ours. It'd be like stealing from God. But that's just something I believed, Bill, since I was so young. And maybe I had the fear of God put in me about that at a very young age. I don't know, but it's not like I'm scared. I'm just, it's like respect. It's like reverence. It's like, of course I wouldn't take that from you.
Right. No, I totally agree. And here's the interesting thing. I've done this for over 30 years, and you probably imagine in that time frame, I've talked to literally thousands of people about their financials, and they come in all different forms. And many people will come to me with credit card debt or issues. Here's the one thing I can tell you. This is an interesting number, and I didn't think of it until you just said it. I have never sat with anybody who has been tithing faithfully that is in financial duress. I'm going to say that again. I've never sat with anybody who comes into my office who is tithing, who is under financial duress. I've had many people, Cammie, come to me under financial duress. My credit cards, or I lost my job, or just this fear of money and what's going on. But as you've said that, not one of the people that came to me under financial duress said, oh, and by the way, I've been faithfully tithing this whole time. They've never said that. And I never put those two together, even just now, until you said that. They've never said in my 30 years, I have been tithing faithfully and I have huge financial problems. It's never happened. So I think you're right. And the blessing piece I tell my children is, it's not just that you'll make money, it's that the washing machine doesn't break down. It's that the transmission in the car doesn't go. God blesses us in many different ways than just giving you more money. It's this financial protection. I almost see people that tithe it as if there's a financial hedge about them, that God keeps these disasters financially from happening to them because they, through the 10%, are saying, I trust in you no matter what. So it's not just I give 10% and money comes back. That's not it. It's this protection. And, in the church world, we use this hedge of protection. I almost always see people who are faithful tithers have a hedge of financial protection around them.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so before we transition to the next part of what we're going to talk about, I got to tell you guys a story. This is a personal story. I also believe the Bible talks a lot about not publicly talking about giving, keeping that very private. It's kind of a private matter. But I also believe there's opportunities and spaces to encourage others in their faith. And that's what I want to do with you guys today, because I might cry. I didn't even see this coming. Money is such a big deal to me, you guys. Like, I just believe we have the power to change lives so significantly for those of us that are blessed financially and those that take this spiritual discipline seriously. And so you guys, some of you may not know this. You may be new to the following here, but I went through a divorce about 6 years ago, and it was a real ugly, messy divorce financially, and just all the things that we had that we were dividing up. And it was also very costly, because I think that's why the Bible says to try to do it without going into courts, because it can get very messy and costly. And so I knew I had this huge bill coming after a real tough month of some things in trial and mediation. And so I remember hearing the Lord, you guys, this is above and beyond tithing. This is beyond tithing. Now, notice this scripture says, bring in tithes and offerings. So to me, he's talking about the tithe. So I'm challenging you in that. But then there's also the offerings, which is above and beyond. Mm-hmm. And I'm no theologian, you guys. So, I'm not saying that I'm got everything 100% right, but I believe that the Holy Spirit in me gives me a lot of wisdom in interpreting what the word says. And so tithes and offerings. And so where God has me currently, I've been faithfully tithing since I was able to tithe anything. And have never wavered on that. And I don't say that to brag. I say that to impress upon you what a powerful discipline this has been, and how I've seen such abundance from it. And again, not just financially, but so I'm going through all that, and I hear the Lord tell me a number and who to give it to. And I literally said, you got it, after I find my bill. And it was going to, and then also taxes this is what was going on too. Taxes were due. So I was about to find out that big number, right? And self-employed, you get a big number at the end of the year. You hope it kind of washes out, but it usually doesn't when you start getting up into the higher brackets. So between taxes, this lawyer bill, what I knew was in my bank account, I hear the Lord ask for an offering above and beyond the tithe. And I go, okay, wait, let me see what that tax bill is first. And then within 24 hours, I heard it again. And I heard it so loudly, I called my assistant and I said, please send $10,000 to such and such. And she's like, okay. I said, like, right now. And she's like, okay. Within 20 seconds, I picked up the phone, called her back, said, wait. Just hold it. Get ready to send it because I need to figure out what my tax and my lawyer bill is going to be. So she's like, okay. So she paused. You guys, I kid you not, I kind of had a number of what my tax bill was going to be, what they had kind of technically identified the total to be. It was massive. And so after I call and tell her to cancel that, literally I heard, you're not listening to me. I mean, it's just like this conversation going on. And I'm thinking to myself, what is wrong with you? You know better. He has always been faithful. He always has your back. Like, so I pick up the phone again and I say, okay, I'm sorry. I know I'm waffling. Please send that money. Send it now. If I call you back, don't listen to me. I literally was like, send the money. She sends the money, you guys. It's not somebody I'd never given to before. It was just an amount out of the blue that I felt that I was supposed to give. And I ended up getting the tax total within the next 24 hours. It was a fifth of what they told me it was going to be.
Right.
It was a fifth.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about $10,000. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, guys. And it was a fifth of that. And I just was like, and you guys, here's the thing. That wasn't about money so much to me as it was about God's power and his faithfulness and my ability to trust God more than money. And I think a lot of us learned that in a really painful way this last year with the pandemic, whether it was losing a job, whether, I think many of us have more reliance on money, unfortunately, than we do even on God in many ways, which is why I think the Bible says it's easier to get through for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than it is for somebody who loves money to get to a rich man to get to heaven. I know I just massacred that verse, but I think you guys know what I'm trying to say there.
Well, and I think, Cammie, that is what makes that story so powerful is something I have learned, and I've got these phrases. So one of the things I teach my children and other people when they come to me about money is I tell them that God has no interest in you giving. If you do come to terms with that, like you said, he already has it all. He does not need our 5, 10, 20, 50%. He doesn't need a penny of it. The church has been sustained for 2,000 years before we came along. So God has been faithful. That's not what it's about. What it's about is what you just said, and that I have found that God, through the voice of the Holy Spirit, uses money as a tool to have a conversation with me about my heart. And so at first I do what you do. I kind of engage in this logistical 10 grand, 20 grand, 50, whatever. And he's going, and that's, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about me and you. And I want to know if you think I'm a good God. And I want to know if you think I'm trustworthy. And so money means nothing except it is probably, and you and I probably share this, one of the most powerful tools God uses to create deep conversation with us and to strengthen our faith in the goodness, because I come back, and this makes me tear up, is he is a good father. And not all of us had great fathers, so we may have things about that. That's fine. But he is a good father, and a good father engages in relationship, in intimacy, and trust, and vulnerability, and draws us closer and closer to him. And money is just a tool he uses so well to do that. So that story, Cammie, just captures what I tell people to do. Quit worrying about the money. Enter into a conversation with the Holy Spirit, and don't worry about the money. Listen to the Spirit. The Spirit will never lead us wrong. I totally agree with you, girl.
Well, I don't do this often. I probably should do this more often. But for those of you that are listening right now, I don't know why, I just felt this too. I believe this has been a concept or a spiritual discipline that you've actually been wondering about or waffling about. Maybe you tithe and then you stop. Then you tithe and you stop. Something hits the fan. Maybe it is a furnace. Maybe your check goes down 1 month. So I believe there's two types of people here, those that are curious about the discipline and those of you that are waffling in the discipline. And I'm here to tell you, I don't believe in coincidences. And I'm so excited. Like, I feel like I want to read that verse to you. Like, I double dog dare you to test God. He's going to show off like only he can and show up for you in ways that only a good father like he is will do. And so I'm excited for you guys. And I'm going to ask you to share this podcast with at least 2 people. I don't ask you guys that much, but I believe the world is hurting on wisdom in the area of money. And I also know that our time is going to end and there's probably going to be a million other things Bill and I wish we could have talked about. So I'm going to give you guys 2 people right now, and Bill may add another one to it, but I'm going to give you guys 2 people right now that I want to encourage you to, go get some of their books or join one of their workshops. And so the first one I would say to you would be Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey has some incredible programs to teach you about money. And especially if things are really upside down for you right now and you have a whole lot of debt and you're afraid to lose things, he's going to have this great plan. And we're going to talk about a little bit of that here. He also just has great money principles that will help you turn things around. And I just want to encourage you guys in that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you have not gotten so far in the wrong direction. And now that you know better, you can do better. And that's why we're here. The other person is Pastor Robert Morris. Now he has a book series called The Blessed Life. But for those of you that like Audible and YouTube, I just go to YouTube and look up the Blessed Life series, start with number 1. I think there's 8 or 9 of them, and get ready to have your mind blown with just this concept of generosity and giving and first fruits, if you need a little bit more understanding on that whole tithing concept. So I feel like Robert Morris is going to really speak to that tithing principle and giving and offering. And then you're going to have Dave Ramsey, who's going to practically set you up to get out of debt or to know how to manage that 80% you might be spending every month, whether it's entertainment, bills, he's got the envelope system. And so he'll help you with practical strategies to manage your money, especially if nobody's ever coached you in that. But before we transition to this next part, Bill, I have one more story to tell. I told you I had a little bit of long-windedness early on today. Okay, you guys, I've been a part of my new business for about 3 years. I was making more in a month than I was making in a whole year teaching, just to give you a little bit of an idea of where I was at financially. I'm 29 years old. Fortunately, I was raised in a home where we were taught principles on stewardship. However, that doesn't mean I wasn't a young kid making a whole lot of money and excited to go do a lot of things, Yeah. So I had the privilege of sitting down with a man who had done taxes with my dad for a long time and actually had a significant amount of experience in the area of direct sales. So he had seen this industry. He had seen some of the mountaintop highs people could get to in their income, but knowing that it's 100% commission type job, that's also a very inconsistent kind of income. And so, he was high-fiving us with what we had done and what we had already had in savings. And he had this conversation with me, and he said to me, you guys are making more money now than most people ever see in their lifetimes. And he said, Cammie, do not change your standard of living. He said, I want you to stay at the current standard of living you're at, which you guys would be more like a high-end teacher salary, not making more in a month than I was making a whole year teaching. And we were living in a home that wasn't, I think it was like $150,000 house at the time. I think we were still driving used cars, nicer used cars, but used cars, and seriously paying that off because we were conscious about being debt free. But I say all this to you guys to impress upon you. It's not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep. And I really believe that as you start learning more and more on the principles of money, that'll set in for you. But I'm so thankful because you guys were one of two people. We're either the kind of person that has to go learn it the hard way before we learn the lesson, or we can hear someone else who learned it the hard way, and that helps us avoid learning the lesson. Now, traditionally, I'm the one that's like, thank you for telling me what you learned. I need to go learn that myself. That's just kind of typically how I work. But for whatever reason that day, that gentleman grabbing my hands and calling me sweetie and almost like crying out to me to not change my standard of living hit home to me so heavily that we didn't. And we really took care of the principles Dave Ramsey taught us at that point. We weren't just using the envelopes to know how to spend our money and pay cash for things. We started building a rainy day savings. We started this snowball effect on debt that we had, the snowball effect that Dave Ramsey teaches about. And, Dave Ramsey says to have 3 to 6 months of bills of what it takes to live each month in savings as a rainy day. And for us, we called ourselves to a 9 to 12 month. We believe that with the type of industry we were in sales, we needed to have more, right? We needed to have more. And then we did keep our standard of living where we were at that time. Now, does that mean we didn't go on vacations? Because our standard of living before was no vacations. There was no money in the budget for that. No, but we weren't doubling and tripling the size of our house. We weren't, turning in used vehicles that are paid for or partly paid for brand new vehicles with a whole new note, So Bill, let's transition here for a minute. Anything you want to add to what that first text guy had said to me, or even just as we jump into some of these basic principles of stewarding money?
No, I am in agreement. I remember years ago when I was a senior VP in Chicago and I was getting transitioned to Grand Rapids, and I came here and I went around with a real estate agent, and she asked me my income, and I told her, and then she said, "Oh, well, you can afford a $2.5 million house." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Well, based on the ratios and your income." I said, "I have no interest in a $2.5 million house." And I told her what I wanted, and she said, "Well, that's well below your means." And I said, "Exactly." And we lived in that house for 15 years. And those of you, I drive a Toyota Tundra, I'm not a fancy guy. And what happens when you do that, living below your means, my family, we kind of worked to a place where we wanted to live on about 50%. And as you know, kind of as your income gets bigger, it's easier to live on 50%. And even though we as a family live on about 50%, we live a better life than most folks. I mean, we get to give away more and to do more. And that word you use, that generosity, you are correct, Cammie. Let's start with Dave Ramsey. Let's get some of the debt issues. Let's kind of shore that up. And then let's start to be the second. Let's build up resources. And if you can have, and you know how much I love your vision, your dream board, if you can say, I want to be able to move to a place where I can have generosity, well, that's the third stream. Like the first one is get the debt, get the financials together. Second one, start saving, investing, getting some resources. And then over time, God blesses that. And next thing, he will call us to generosity. So my word would be I want to encourage all your people, live in the three. Like if you're in one, don't be like just, oh, I'll never get there. No, be in the first one and be passionate about getting the debt paid off and getting the Dave Ramsey. Be excited about that. Then get to the second one. Be excited about investing. And then get to the third one and be excited about generosity. Because like you said, our God calls us to it. And so I love that idea of saying, I don't have to live up here. My family doesn't. I'll give you one joke in our house. My son, William, about a month ago came home and said, Dad, I saw these new Nike shoes. They're awesome. Can I get them? I said, well, typical dad, how much are they? He said, they're $300. I said, we're not paying $300 for a pair of gym shoes, just not in our household. And he was all discouraged. I said, but let me tell you something. His name's William. I said, William, you're not going to get $300 Nikes, but you own Nike stock in your IRA and you don't even know it. So tell all your friends, buy as many pair of Nikes as they can because you're going to make more money. Now, that seemed good to me, but he's like, Dad, that's not any good. Someday he'll figure out that's good.
No, I love that. And you guys, I'm going to tell you, when you start getting these principles in place, I would have calculated opportunities to reward yourself. Like allow yourself to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Bill's not saying that. I'm not saying that. Bill has made a choice so that he can do some of those other things. And so I want you to appreciate all styles. Now, if you guys come hang out with me, I don't live in a shabby house. I do have a really nice car. And yet, you guys, and Bill, no one knows this, I live on 60% of my income, maybe 50.
Right.
And and that's because of also these principles. And so you guys, I'm not doing any of these things. I'm sitting in church and my pastor says, today we're going to start a series called the Blessed Life series. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then he slips up a video and puts a person on the video. And I'm like, well, this is just us watching a video. I could have done that at home. But I did not miss one of those weeks because from the very first sermon that Pastor Robert Morris gave about the blessed life, I cried. I cried because I believe God turned my heart in that moment to why he had me on this earth. And some of you might say, well, Kim, you're on this earth to coach and teach and be a mom and da-da-da. I believe I'm on this church to equip, or on this planet to equip, empower, and encourage. And one of the ways God has given me a tool to do that is through finances. And so, this can be your reality, you guys. And I'm going to go back to when I was teaching, when I was waitressing in college. I tithed and I followed these principles then also. It just looked different, you know? Yeah. And Bill, isn't there a story in the Bible where like a guy came and gave out of his abundance? And so he only gave but he had so much, it was kind of like he didn't sweat it. And then there was someone that came and gave out of her lap, and that's what God praised. And
it is.
I didn't even prepare for that one. It just came to my mind. So I guess we're supposed to talk about it.
That story it's one of my more favorites. So you got to kind of I'll try to do this quick. It's the story of the widow who gives those tiny, like almost like 2 cents. So the man comes in, he gives this and makes sure everybody can see it. And everybody, because of the way the temple was, it made a lot of noise, and everybody in the whole place would have turned and looked. And then quietly, this widow comes in, and Jesus, there's something I think more profound than just the money is that ironically, she's never named. But what is amazing about Jesus is here is a person that in a culture where women might not be viewed, Jesus honors her, he recognizes her, and he elevates her. And he says, this thing that she has done is greater than all the others. And it's almost as if she was going to try to slide in and slide out. She was going to like put her little donation in, and it's Jesus that turns and doesn't recognize which is great, all that. He looks and sees her and says this day that this great sacrifice. So what I love is Jesus recognizes, as you said, both. We never want to be just one or just the other. The issue is a heart of humility. That's what the issue is.
And I can hear people right now listening and saying what I can give is so little and matters so little. And as you can hear from that story, you have no idea the impact that could make, and the heart posture that you're putting yourself in, but also the person that's on the receiving line, whether it's the church, whether it's a nonprofit organization, you just never know, you know. But so all right, Bill, let's quickly, I don't want to say quickly, guys, let's just talk about the 10-10-80 real quick. I want to go back to that. So 10% tithe, okay? 10% goes to the church. All right, next 10%, let's go right into our savings. And now that we have direct deposit and things don't come in check form, it's so much easier to direct that money the second it hits your account. So there's no temptation to do other things with it. Now let's talk about the 80, okay? Let's talk about the 80 for a minute, because I want to give you a quick rundown. First of all, if you have debt and you want to pay that debt off, one thing Dave Ramsey's going to teach you is you have to know your debt to the penny. He's going to tell you, know your debt to the penny. So if you've got student loans, if you've got credit card debt, if you've got medical debt, whatever, house debt, car debt, like line them all up, write every single one down individually, smallest to largest. Can you do that for me? Smallest to largest, then add them all up. You can use a calculator. I'm not going to make you do long addition. Get it added to a total to the penny, so you know what you have to pay off, okay? Then I want you to figure out all your bills, your house payment, your electric, your internet, You know what I mean? How much you spend on gas every month, groceries every month, like write all that out. You're making a budget, because that 80% is what needs to pay for all that. Now you might be saying, Cammie, there's no way I can knock out that debt with the 80%. Well, we're going to have a strategy for that, attacking that a little bit by a little bit. Some of you may realize right away you are so far beyond your 80%, not even beginning to chip away at the debt, that we're going to talk about how you need to start peeling back. What can you peel back? Do you need to have the gold cable offering with package with every channel, every sports or can you go without internet for a couple months or a year? I'm just throwing some things out there. Maybe instead of Hulu, Netflix, all the things, you pick one, so those are some things that you might have to start doing, is whittling that back, especially if it's gotten out of control. If you're already whittled back and you're good, that's awesome. Don't raise that yet, even if your income is going up, until you have some of these other things in place. And the reason I asked you to put your bills or your debt in order from least to greatest, add it all up, know it to the penny, because that's your goal. I want you to start paying off the smallest one first. And you might say, well, that's my lowest interest rate. And I'm like, I don't care. There's something about winning. There's something about cutting up a credit card. There's something about ripping up a bill and never seeing it again, And so use that 80% to start paying off your debt. And then the savings, guys, that savings that you're doing, I don't want you calling Bill and asking him to invest until you have 3 to 6 months worth of bills in savings first. Anything you want to speak to about that? I just want to give some high level to-dos, knowing that if they're anything like me and their heart is burning or their tears are falling as they're watching this, because this is such an important matter for them, I want you to have some strategies to get started. But that's why I told you about Robert Morris and Dave Ramsey. You got to get in one of those. I mean, what we're sharing with you today is just scratching the surface.
No, there's 100%. I love that you both preach a sermon and a financial lesson. I love that. So I would totally agree. You want to know what your debt is. You want to know to the penny. And I love the winning. Let's start scratching things off and say, I beat that one. Because when you beat the small one, it gives you an attitude that says, I can do this. Like, even though it was $138, I don't care what it is. I beat that one. And then the $240 one, well, I'm going to beat that one. And I'm going to beat that one. Then you're working your way up, and the one that's at the top. You've got that big one, that 26,000 or 13. You're going to say, hey, I beat all these. I'm going to beat that one. I'm working my way up to that debt. And the day when it's gone, unbelievable. The feeling you have of what you accomplished. So money's not just money. There is, as you've indicated, the right emotion behind it. And I echo the Dave Ramsey for sure and Robert Morris. I wouldn't even, if that's all everyone did, we would have very little problem financially in those people we influence. So I'm 100% in agreement with you.
Okay, so then one other thing I want to share with you guys is you're putting together that budget. Some of you are going to see you're way above the 80%. You got to peel back and find areas to say no to so that you can get within that window. Some of you are going to go, wow, well, I'm only spending like 40. Guess what? You get to do the other 40 to either really get 3 to 6 months in savings faster, or you can take some of it and get that savings faster, all while you're paying down debt faster. Do you see how that works? When you're not, that's why when Bill is talking about living on, like, they live on 50% of their income, that means they have more to give and more to save. And that to me is security on a number of levels. And it's obviously our security isn't in the money, but it's in the principles that I believe are biblical that will set us a foundation that give us security, and women, in case you didn't know this, one of the number one core fears of a woman is security. Yeah. Men, if your woman talks about money a lot, it's because security is a core need that woman needs to feel safe. Yeah. And women, if you're not married like me, I mean, this is something that's important because it will help you feel safe in the area of security. And so it's definitely worth investing in. It's just like anything else, you guys, whether it's dieting and losing weight, whether it's, well, I'll just say dieting, losing weight, because that's my struggle bus right now. like if you want to have that body, if you want to feel good, if you want to have that savings, if you want to know there's your future well-being is being set up financially, then you'll make the short-term sacrifices now to set you up for the future gain of what your goals really are, and that's like me saying no to nachos last night, so I wouldn't have to worry about those extra pounds this morning. I'm still working on that. But you see what I'm saying? It all comes with trade-off.
Oh yeah. I couldn't agree more. That recently, the last 6 months, just with COVID, I had gotten bigger than I'd ever gotten, and pretty disgusted with myself. And my wife is awesome. She hired a personal trainer, and we both go to her, and she's a great. And my lost maybe 30 pounds over the last 6 months, stronger and faster than I think I've been in a long time. And what my son said to me, like something like, "Dad, you're doing pretty good," or something. And I said, I got into this problem one small bite at a time, and 5 extra minutes in the lazy boy at a time. I said, I'm not going to get out of it with one big, huge decision. I'm going to get out of it the same way I got into it. Making a lot of really, really small decisions, bad ones, is what got me into it, and making a lot of really, really small, doable, good ones. And so I echoed that, where normally you get the $6 Starbucks. You don't need the $6 Starbucks. I mean, do I like it? Yes. But it's the little bad decisions that usually got us into it. And it's going to be the little good decisions that get us out of it. And one of the phrases I teach churches and people too is that if you say enough small no's to things, I tell churches, say no to things financially, because then someday you'll get to say a huge yes to something, because you'll have built up that reserve. And it's the same with your finances. Say enough little no's. Little no's are actually pretty easy. Don't buy the extra pair of shoes. Don't get that. There's a feeling, and I understand the feeling of buying something, the euphoria that you get when you buy something, right? You get it. It's exciting. But if you can say enough small no's, it creates a day where you can begin saying yes, and you can say big yeses. And if there's anything I know about you, it's dream big, do, and you're teaching them a great way to get there. So I think I may start taking you with me to seminars to say, I'm not going to say this because I'm the money guy. I'm going to let Cammie say this, and I'm going to sit down.
Well, I'll never forget when a business partner who I knew was making bank shared vulnerably that they were afraid to lose their house. And I'm thinking, you make more money than most people in America. And right. I realized in that moment, maybe how much I took for granted, just the discernment I had at a young age in the area of finances, but also the passion. I wish I had the passion to lose weight and eat well that I have in food. I mean, in money. We'll get there. I'm getting there. I'm 142 pounds and I love to work out. That's my affirmation. But I you know what? Here's the thought I want to leave you, those of you that are listening. I believe there's a couple different groups, right? There's the people that are thinking about money right now and they're knowing they're supposed to be tithing, and there's some people that have been waffling. But I really believe there's people on this call that are in the beginning stages of planning a strong financial future. And there's some of you that are already doing well. And I believe the Blessed Life series, this generosity talk, the Malachi 3:10, I double dog dare you to get tithe and offer, and then let me just blow your socks off. Like, you guys, that's the Cammie translation. If you didn't know, there was a Cammie translation, but it's true. It's true. And he will. And I genuinely want to support the people that I get to do life with in the area of money. And so guys, if you have questions, reach out. Obviously I'm super accessible through Facebook and Instagram. Also, you can go to you can go to CammiePentecost.com/contact. You can sign up for my newsletter, but you can also ask questions. All my contact information is there. And I genuinely don't want to just have this conversation once and leave it. I want to begin this conversation and help you on a journey, because it's a journey. It's exciting. I don't know. It's really good. So Bill, the one thing I wanted to say was, I really believe to whom much is given, much is required. Right. Part of that is why I want to share this with you guys. And if you aren't stewarding what you have now well financially in the area of finances, how can you be entrusted with more? So no matter where you're at right now, if you're close to your dream life level or you're just getting started on running for your dream life level, I want to challenge you, no matter where you're at and what you have, to steward that well. And as you do, I just want you to know he will blow your socks off. He will. He'll blow your mind. And it just might be with contentment and peace, and never a furnace that breaks down or a transmission that goes out.
Right.
But it also might be in the area of financial abundance, because he knows he can trust you. Because again, it's all his. It is all his. That's my belief. And he's going to put it in places where he knows he can trust it to be where he needs it. Because you're right. He doesn't need anything, Bill. He doesn't need anything. And he's got the right people and things in store to get exactly what he needs, where he needs it. And I don't know about you guys, but I want to be that conduit. You know, and I have my hands wide open where it comes in one and it just goes right out the other. And when God asks for it, I go, it's yours. I'm just holding it for you, you know?
Right. No, that's awesome. I couldn't agree more. And I can tell you the other side of the coin. I mean, you know, there's folks that I'm a person of faith, but not all my clients are. And so I see the difference between folks that are faith-based, that have principles of generosity, principles like God owns it all, trusting in the goodness of God. And there's a heart issue that is so different between people of faith. And I believe that if we get this right, as you've described, Cammie, I think it becomes a powerful evangelism tool. It really can, because the world is used to seeing people that are doing well and it's all about them. And we can show them something very, very different, because we are called to expand God's kingdom and to grow God's kingdom. And so I think if we get these principles right, as you've said, if we have both the right mind and the right heart, if we let those come together, the world is not just shocked by the generosity, they're shocked by the amount of love and compassion that comes along with the generosity, because we are followers of Christ.
Love it. Well, I was pulling up my notes because while as I am, those of you who are listening may be sad that this is ending, I'm going to challenge you again, share this with no less than two people that you just say, and don't say, hey, you need this. That never really goes over well. But I would encourage you to say, wow, this was really awesome today for this reason. And you came to mind, you know, so I thought I'd share it with you. And if you want to throw it up on social media and tag me in it, I'll accept that tag. And obviously, as always, if you want to give me a review, would greatly appreciate that. But we put a survey out, Bill. And so we're going to actually go ahead and record another podcast before we hear from our listeners on other areas. But we're going to talk a little bit about choosing a financial advisor. We're going to talk about different investments that are out there between stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and annuities. And then we are going to talk about the most common financial mistakes people make. And so that will be all Bill, and I'll just get to sit here and do this. But excited to dive into those topics with you. And for those of you that have listened to this, if that's of interest to you, make sure you dive in, because if that's not up yet, it will be very soon. So Bill, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been great, Cammie. You know how much I love being at the house and getting to see you. This is the next best thing, so I'll take it. So it's great to be together with you as usual.
Well, thank you for jumping on and sharing all your expertise. And I can't wait to dive in a little more.
All right. Thank you.